Hello everybody, how's it going? It's Ben. Welcome aboard the Bonny Rackham for Season 4, Episode 8. So close to the end now. Let's just get straight into this one, get a title sorted.
Get us underway.
Okay, yeah, so an obvious choice for this one would be Skeleton Island, which, yeah, I really did think about. But I think I might save that one for one of the last two if, you know, no inspiration comes. But I actually really like The World in Balance for a title for this one. Inspired by what Flint refers to Silver and Maddie's partnership as being in terms of leading this cause, leading this war. And this episode really heavily features two pairings. Anne and Max finally putting their relationship and their kind of world in balance a lot better than it has been in that sense. But the same cannot be said for Flint and Silver themselves, who, yeah, when they are one, when they are in balance, the world is in balance with themselves. But yeah, that is certainly not the case this episode and by the episode's end. So yeah, I thought that was quite a fitting title with a bit more imagination to it. So yeah, let's get into The World in Balance and we'll get a brief summary and a rating sorted.
First item.
This is one of those ones where the writing credits and the story are shared, you know, one of those weird ones. We have Teleplay by Tyler Van Patten, who is a name we have come across before somewhere in the creative team. And the story is by Jennifer Castillo and Gillian Morlin. Who are two new names who are in the writing credits at least. They've probably popped up in production before, I'm sure. And it is directed by Uta Bricevitz, which, yeah, again, another new name. So, yeah, very interesting. But yeah, this is a fantastic episode. It's beautiful in some parts. Can you imagine which ones? And tense and suspenseful in others. The full crossover to Treasure Island now is really upon us. Billy knows of a map, middle ground for Woodes Rogers to make the exchange away from prying eyes. With some intel from Nassau now though, it seems like Jack won't be too far behind. Despite a calm heart-to-heart between Silver and Flint about what's next, Woodes Rogers forces their hand when Maddie has a gun pointed at her head. Already prepared for this though, despite Flint's protests, Silver presents him with the cash he already brought along, and in the aftermath, things get heated below deck between them, leaving our double axe unity completely broken by the episode's end. But there is one unity that is repaired by the episode's end. Max is made an offer by Marion Guthrie, seemingly too good to refuse, and Anne is given a little bit of a reality check by Idelle, bringing both Max and Anne together in an emotional bit of closure right at the end. As usual, the wind up to the end, the last sort of 2 or 3 episodes of the season, are fire. A great mix of pretty much closing the final chapter for a couple of characters, bar a little bit of epilogue in the finale, while also amping up the stakes for everyone else in the final 2 hours of the show to come. Yeah, this is a very strong episode, which will receive a pretty close to perfect 9.6 for me. So yeah, without further ado, let's just get right into and deep dive into this one.
Next item.
So for this one, I'm going to start with Jack. Very brief Jack this episode. Also very briefly checking in with Mrs. Hudson and Mapleton. And then we can do everyone outside of Philadelphia. And then I can finish with Philadelphia and Max, Marion and Anne. And yeah, for the most part, give these two great characters their kind of final dues. But yeah, let's begin. Okay, Jack, you know, not a hell of a lot to go over with Jack in all honesty. So yeah, we get a little bit of setup with Mrs. Hudson. She's packing away Eleanor's things, which, yeah, is quite emotional seeing her old season 1 outfit laid out on the bed. It's recognisable straight away, the belt and her red coat especially. Yeah, Eleanor's presence still really being felt despite, like, not being alive, you know, not actually being here these last couple of episodes. So yeah, Mrs. Hudson, she goes through Eleanor's drawers and she finds a diary and she starts having a bit of a snoop through. I'm not a massive fan of this invasion of privacy and 2 diaries sort of suddenly appearing from nowhere, never mentioned before this episode for significant plot development, maybe could be considered quite convenient. But it's another quick A to get us to a B, isn't it? So ultimately it works without too much complaint from me, really. And yeah, we hear Hannah New in the voiceover, we hear Eleanor, And yeah, the entry is fairly recent by sounds of it. She's talking about sticking by her husband. Just, yeah, more sadness for what went down, what could have been, what she didn't know. And Woodes Rogers kind of passes by and catches Mrs. Hudson snooping, but he doesn't really comment on it or reprimand her for it. He just asks her to ready his things. He's to set sail at first light. And yeah, we'll come back to him. But yeah, he is so distracted with this revenge. He doesn't suspect how Mrs. Hudson might use Eleanor's inside info from this diary, which she does. So yeah, the next time we see her, Mrs. Hudson has obviously further read the diary and learned about Mrs. Mapleton and the little underground intel that she had going on with Eleanor. And yeah, I won't go into this scene much, it's ultimately there so Jack has the info on where Woodes Rogers is going to be heading to move that story forwards. It's nice to see Mrs. Mapleton again, though. I've always liked her. A great side character that I've just always enjoyed. But yeah, the brothel survived the Spanish raids. Yay! I guess the women were all hidden in the fort safe, including Mrs. Mapleton. I'm sure she would have sought to that. And so, yeah, Mrs. Hudson has finally realised that Woodes Rogers is a little bit of a loose cannon and might be leading Nassau into some even tougher times ahead. And yeah, and so they sort of set up a sort of, I'll give you intel to help you get back in the inner circle, and then you help me get back to my kids kind of deal is struck. That's sort of what they're doing. And yeah, Jack has snuck onto Nassau along with Featherstone. Very, very risky, but it does make sense that this is the first place that he'd come for some intel. And yeah, I love that, when he's out of focus for a few seconds, when we're sort of focused in on Mapleton and she's talking and we're trying to work out who she's talking to. And yeah, she basically tells him, didn't think she'd be able to be of any help when he came. But yeah, she's just got a result. And yeah, she obviously updates him via, Mrs. Hudson's intel that Woodes Rogers is heading to Skeleton Island. So then, yeah, our only other scene with Jack is him and Featherstone still at the brothel, observing from the balcony. And yeah, they're watching Mapleton chat to a punter, who, as Jack astutely observes, that is a very old man. Yeah, he's very old, very divery, very drunk. And Featherstone says he's heading to Skeleton Island. And he was one of the only last known man alive to have sailed with Henry Avery. Yeah, who is the other diary that we were introduced to in this episode. So yeah, we're following Woodes Rogers directly not being an option just because of the dangers of it, and they'll get spotted straight away. Their best chance is for, this very old man to show them the way. But yeah, so yeah, they're not hopeful on this plan, and as Featherstone points out, two possible outcomes. One, he fails, and they basically get lost at sea for a little while, going around in circles, or by some miracle, he actually gets them there. And Featherstone says he can't tell which one of the two is of more concern. And confused, Jack's just like, what does that mean? And Featherstone points out, their predicament really. Killing Flint was going to be hard enough, but now they have Woodes Rogers and his soldiers to deal with as well. So he sort of asks Jack, doesn't it make sense to sort of just wait in the wings a little bit and see what happens and see if one kills the other, if Woodes Rogers kills Flint. But Jack doesn't want to take that chance because Jack knows if Woodes Rogers gets the cash, he secures his position on Nassau as well. He wins. So yeah, despite the instruction from Mrs. Guthrie, from Marion, Jack's main mission is still defeat Woodes Rogers. That is still his priority above Flint, as makes perfect sense. And so Jack says, everything they need is on that island. Flint, Rogers, and his cache of gems. And he says, if that very old man can get us there, then why are we still standing here? Just as the old man falls, from his cups, from old age, from whatever, in the background. So, that's sort of left, and it's not looking too hopeful, and that obviously just all leads to just absolute hilarious scene next episode. But otherwise, really not a lot to get into with Jack this episode. So let's move on to the big bulk of it, really. Of Flint, Silver, Woodes Rogers, Billy, Maddie, and anyone else that might be involved in all that. So yeah, we open this episode with a masked Lone Rider in the dark, heading towards Miranda's, sort of a very similar imagery that we've not seen for a long time. But this time, no, it's not Flint, it is Woodes Rogers. Miranda's house has a secret basement. That might have been handy for Eleanor and Maddie to have been aware of a couple of episodes ago, but we move swiftly on. Yeah, Flint's mind was on other things. He probably forgot about it himself. That's what we'll say. And yeah, Woodes Rogers, he knows what he's looking for down there. He's been told what he's looking for by Billy, and he finds a book. It's all very mysterious on that first watch, but all is revealed when he returns to Billy, who gave him the info, and as thanks, immediately it seems like it's going to be game over for him when Woodes Rogers just comes straight in and he points the pistol at Billy's face and he pulls the trigger, but it's not loaded. Wow. Yeah, very little sympathy left for Billy, but yeah, that's just Woodes Rogers. That's just power play. That's just cruelty. Woodes Rogers says it's a reminder their fates are linked. And he says if Billy's intel ends badly for him, he's assuring Billy it will for him as well. So yeah, we get some intel on this book, Henry Avery's diary. One of a few of Gates' possessions that he left with Flint for safekeeping. Call back to the bond and the trust that he once had with Flint that so early on in that first season. Yeah, the fact that he trusted Flint especially with prized possessions in his care. There are no two people close enough that something cannot separate them. Some point at which they were never fully connected to begin with, Billy says after talking about Flint killing Gates over a money dispute. Billy's breezing over something far more complicated than... he knows more than this. He knows it's more than this. He doesn't know all of it, but he doesn't care to know all of it, does he? He never really has. But yeah, Woodes Rogers, he felt that one though. He felt that statement, as we see. Because of course, he can relate that statement to his and Eleanor's relationship. They were never really connected on the Nassau kind of aspect. And yeah, I think Billy is oblivious to what that statement means to Woodes Rogers, though. He didn't say it with any malicious intent or to have a dig at Woodes Rogers. He says it happened with Gates and Flint, and it will happen with Flint and Silver. And he sort of flicks through the diary a bit, and he finds the page he's after, and shows him something from the book. A place they can make the exchange off the island, somewhere no one knows about, and he hands him a map. He shows him the page that has a map on it. Right, let me butcher this. Fucking hell. I can't even read in English, let alone try and read in Spanish. Right, La Isla del Esquito, Skeleton Island. We are finally here. That crossover, it is coming. We've had characters that we'd heard before and know they're going to be something to do with Treasure Island, right from the start. But now, here we have the setting ready to make its first appearance. Okay, so yeah, a quick scene with Woodes Rogers. He was supposed to be having a council meeting, but he's late and only one guy remains. I haven't caught his name, but he's the one that gets most of the dialogue, most speaking whenever they're, in the council. But yeah, this is to just basically show that Woodes Rogers is losing all his allies on the council. As this guy points out, they're losing faith in him now. They're losing their patience. He's putting all his energy into chasing the pirates. And yeah, Woodes Rogers, he does some classic deflection. He's only finishing the deal his wife started. We need the money, yada yada, we need this cash. Yeah, it's all lies, it's a revenge side mission, and his colleagues know it, we know it. And yeah, the man points out the truth as he sees it. The pirates are gone, the threat is over. And Woodes Rogers sort of argues back a bit. He's still going on about pirates and how they threaten to just absolutely destroy civilization. And yeah, this guy points out, restoring civilization is not his duty. That's not what he was sent here to do. It never was. He's here to restore stable profits to Nassau, which after allowing half of it to burn to the ground, he's doing an absolutely awful job with it. He knows he's on a revenge path, this guy, and he warns that he will have a mutiny on his hands soon, because they're just getting fed up with it. So yeah, not only has Billy somehow, in between this last episode, become Woodes Rogers' best ally and asset, but he's pretty much now become his only one. Yeah, it's all falling apart for him, and I do love it a lot. I do love it that it's slowly crumbling down for him. So yeah, that just shows where both Billy and Woodes Rogers, from, what they've been reduced to, this road to revenge, the only thing either of them have left now, and they're lost in it, so much so that, my enemy's enemy is my friend sort of thing, and they're just, they've become this unwilling kind of partnership where I don't know if Billy knows or cares, you know, he's expandable, as we've seen, very, very easily, but Woodes Rogers knows now. He's pretty much got nothing else at this current time. So, yeah, it's all getting desperate for them, and if that isn't the consequences of your actions, guys, if that isn't the consequences of your actions, like, there's not much more to deepen with that, is it? But, yeah, anyway, okay, let's move on to the next scene. So, yeah, on to our first Flint and Silver scene, and they're in the cabin. At this point, it's revealed that Kofi and some of the other men are en route to Nassau to sort of go and try and sort out the Maddie situation. And so Silver asks, sort of very calmly, asks Flint, what's next? Flint misunderstands him, and he sort of starts reeling off the rest of the plan. You know, bit of a late night rescue mission for Maddie, but of course still unaware of the Billy factor. They haven't accounted for him knowing their secret routes and having a good idea of what their plan of action would be. But Silver, he's thinking deeper than that when he was asking that question, that what's next. He's really, really losing the vision now, losing the patience, getting tired of this war, and trying to understand how Flint can still be so sure, can still be just so in for it. And he sort of asks, say we succeed, your war. You know, your war, he says, not our war. Very kind of poignant words there, I think. You know, then he points out that he's seen Nassau after Eleanor's commerce sort of fell through, after Jack's propriety, and afterwards Roger's oppression. And he sort of, you know, sums up, there's nothing on Nassau but horror. And he asks, what if the result of this war isn't beyond the horror? What if it's the horror itself? Woo, that's quite a good summary of war in general, isn't it? Which I'm not going to really go any deeper into outside of the show. But yeah, both men desperate to cling on to this friendship, this bond, despite it being so evident that they are on completely different pages now. Yeah, both are just sort of really sort of trying to talk the other down a bit, get them to see their own way of thinking, which of course we know is just doomed to fail ultimately. And yet Flint can see that Silver is wavering, but he still has so much faith in him here. Flint says, if we are to truly reach a moment where we might be finished with England, there certainly lies a dark moment first, a moment of terror, where everything appears to be without hope. But I cannot believe that that is all there is. I cannot believe we are so poorly made as that, grown so used to the yoke that there cannot be progress without it. Oh man, yeah, God, the great words, by the way, obviously, is Flint. Oh, he's going to spit absolutely poetry bars from now on, pretty much. They were just like, yeah, we're not going to give Flint any more kind of half-assed words to say, any kind of, oh, what's the time sort of dialogue. We're just going to absolutely make him spit bars from here on till the end. But yeah, my point, you know, this is so hard now for as a viewer. It's hard in that, you know, both their points they're making or going to be making are so valid. You know, Flint is really so logical what he's saying here. It really is. But he's so radical at the same time. It's so, you know, you go to Silver's points and you're like, yeah, this is mad. He's still going. It's mad after all we've seen, after all that's been evident. We've seen it all. We've seen Nassau in so many different states. And just look what's happened. It's just gone tits up every time. Why is this one going to be any different? And considering how hard we're having to get there, you know. But then Flint just drops all that. Flint, he's just got so much faith in people, so much faith in humanity. Despite everything, despite all he's seen, despite everything Silver telling him. No one is really particularly wrong here during most of these kind of to and fro points they're making. And yeah, Silver, you know, he sort of drops the truth back as a kind of touche, saying it's a lot to ask, waging so much suffering on blind faith. And Flint, he's quick to counter and he says it's not entirely faith. So yeah, Flint, he's still very clearly committed. He's showing that, yeah, I am not ready to give up here, despite it looking so bleak, because I have to believe there is something more. There is more to people. And Silver sort of says, yeah, a little bit baffled again by sort of Flint just still going with it so strong. And he says, you know, you think so much of what we can accomplish together. Like, you really believe we can do this? And Flint corrects him. You know, him and Maddie. Silver and Maddie, he says. And yeah, and he gives Maddie her props, you know, and says, no one would argue that she is the best of them all. You hear no arguments from me. Maddie is great. Maddie is a great leader, and Maddie has proved just how far she's willing to go for this war. But again, Flint's not understanding that Silver probably doesn't want to hear this right now, I think, and it's tough. And Flint's just so blinded by this blind faith that, yeah, he is missing the picture. But again, that is going to be Uno reversed in their follow-up scene. So yeah, Flint reaffirms that the cash is critical for war, but so is she. So is Maddie. And yeah, I did doubt him a little bit on that front the last episode. And of course, his desperate actions at the end are so risky for Maddie. But it's clear to see here she means a lot to him, to the effort. And yeah, he knows she's such an important part moving forwards. And yeah, Silver asks Flint, you think me capable of leading them all through this? And Flint just says, I think you are the best of us. The two of you together are the world in balance. Which, yeah, calls back to my title. Yeah, just so much faith Flint still has in his friend, in Silver, in Maddie. But yeah, like Woods, Rogers and Billy are kind of blinded by revenge. He's holding on to faith in humanity, maybe a bit blinded now by this point after all he's seen and been through. His faith in Silver, his faith in holding it all together. But I think Silver is touched and inspired by that faith. And in mentioning Gates earlier, this bond now between them far surpassing it in terms of Flint. Silver and Flint are just something else than what Flint and Gates were. Silver as close to Flint as anyone's ever been. Maybe even Miranda in some sense. But yeah, of course, reality is about to hit them both hard. And their bond, they're both doing all they can to hold together, with this kind of understanding and this calm back and forth. It is about to break. As does Silver's perspective. Flint has just about talked him around to holding on to here, I think. So yeah, out on deck now, and they both spot Woods Rogers' ship in the distance. It takes them a little while to work out who it is and all that sort of stuff. He's caught Kofi, the men they sent, and Maddie is on board. And yeah, they see Billy, and it all makes sense to them. And yeah, the prisoners are brought out on deck, and Woods Rogers, he just takes his pistol, and he just shoots Kofi in cold blood, dropping him into the sea. There's just really nothing more to be said about this man anymore, about Woods Rogers. There really isn't. It's all been said. But yeah, let's say R.I.P. to Kofi and raise a quick one to him. He was loyal to Maddie to the end. We didn't really see a lot of him. Did he ever speak? I think he might have. But yeah, he was loyal. He was a loyal one to the end. And yeah, I think Flint and Silver are maybe a little bit surprised and shocked by this play by Woods Rogers, by his coldness and this nonchalant execution. They've just heavily underestimated him, just as he did them very early on. But he's not doing that anymore. He's not playing any more games. And yeah, Woods Rogers, he takes another of their crew, unnamed crew member, and does the same again. No qualms at all, no hesitation, straight in the sea. And yeah, and there's absolutely no chance that he'll have a moral breakdown in his cabin, after these two brutal executions. Again, parallels for me to, yeah, but the pirates are just as bad. No, they're not. Not as this guy, not in this show, which is ironic, because the real Woods Rogers is actually a bit of a kind of legend, but I won't go on to the history of all that now. But yeah, at this point, Maddie's next up to go, and at this point, Silver is not risking Maddie any further. Flint is ordering kind of gun crews to prepare for a fight, but Silver yells belay that order, and of course it's Silver that has the final word now with the crew, and he tells Hans to go and fetch it quickly. And Flint immediately knows. Flint just knows immediately. You can just feel his stomach kind of go, fuck, he bought it. Even when he's not got anything to say, Toby Stephens just shows you everything, and you can just see so much going on in this scene in his face, and just all, when he brings it up, he's like, oh, God. He just knows exactly how this is going to play out. And yeah, and when Flint looks like he's about to repeat the gunfire order, Silver says, don't even think about it. And of course, yeah, Billy has clued Woods Rogers in exactly on how all this will play out. He knows Silver would have brought the cash as backup. And so Woods Rogers knows that he's to be expecting a signal But he readies Maddie to be his next victim. He is, he's taking a little bit more time with it. But yeah, I love when he's loading up his gun, we can sort of see it through the glass. And Maddie, kind of girl boss that she is, she's not flinching. She's not giving him anything, again, like she did in the last episode. Her commitment still as clear, as Flint's, even in this blurred moment. And so, yeah, the cash is brought up and the signal is made and Maddie is spared. And yeah, she's ushered below deck, no look back or anything from her. And Flint is, again, visibly gutted. All those emotions on Toby Stephens' face are great. They just give you so much of what's going on. Just the letdown, the betrayal, and just the absolute loss and devastation he's feeling in knowing that cash is possibly now going towards Rogers, and that him and Silver, they're not on the same page at all. And we'll get into that in a very short moment with their follow-up scene. Before then, there is a very small scene with Ben Gunn and DeGroot on board ship. Just another small kind of treasure island tease that's kind of placed in this episode. DeGroot knows why Woodes Rogers is taking them the certain route that he is. It's obviously they're a bit further along now. And he name drops Skeleton Island for the first time. And yeah, like in the book, keeping Skeleton Island mysterious and secretive, and in a bit, building up the ghost story. But it's still kind of keeping it in the realms of what could be reality, keeping up the mix between real and fiction that Black Sails has done so well, all the way throughout. And so, yeah, we get the complete contrast kind of follow-up scene. So yeah, the conversation is no longer calm and civilised. It's a lot of angry shouting. Again, both men are really correct in a lot of the points they are making. There's right routes and with either side, but there's really still no right final answer right now, in my personal opinion anyway. Let me know if you were absolutely no. I am absolutely on this side of the fence now. I am absolutely on Flint's side. Go, we've got this far. Go, go, go. Or I'm absolutely with Silver. This is fucking madness now. Let's stop it. You can't just let Maddie die. It's tough, isn't it? I do kind of lean in the middle. But anyway, so yeah, first off, during his rant, Flint's absolutely correct in this being that I told you so, that Julius will be waiting with for once they return. Flint says a great line. He says, yesterday he had nothing. He was shouting at the rain. What great wordplay. Like I say, they're just absolutely not throwing any casual lines with Flint anymore. Just absolute poetry. Shouting at the rain. I don't know. It's simple, but I really love that. Anyway. But yeah, Silver still can't believe that Flint can't see it from his side. He says, the number of times that I followed you blindly, put friends in the ground because Flint said he knew the way. He may not have understood or supported it, but he did it, and he says, right now, you're going to return the favour. And yeah, there's no real parallels to make, I don't think, but this it always reminds me of Anne's speech to Jack in season 2, after he's had a little bit of a moan about her and Max, and the first time they've had their freeway, and he's very like, oh, and he's doing all that. It's very similar wording to what Anne says to him. Here, Silver says, we'll find a way to put it all together with whatever's left. But do not ask me to choose between a war and a wife. I don't think you're going to like the answer. Which again, fair. From his side, fair, understandable. But knowingly or not, not what the wife will want. And the wife, not even yet the wife, she deserves her say. And I don't think Silver will like that answer. But yeah, either way, Maddie's safety is just not up for negotiation with Silver, as he's making clear. But he is still showing Flint that he's in for dealing with this mess after. Once they have her safe. But of course, that's not enough for Flint. The loss of the cash is the fall of all of it as he sees it. And so, yeah, Silver as a final statement says he doesn't expect his understanding, but he demands his support. Does he have it? And as it seemed that Flint talked Silver round a bit in that first scene, but he flipped it on him when that threat of Maddie was there, the similar is about to happen here. Flint reluctantly says yes. But that's yes really spelled N-O. And yet Silver just sounding so much like Flint of old here, in that kind of command, in that order. They really are kind of one and the same person in so many aspects now. But yeah, of course they are not on the same page on this huge issue any longer. So it's dinner time below deck on the Walrus, and Silver is talking to Hands on one table, and Flint is talking to Dooley on another. Israel Hands, he warns Silver, If you leave him alive long enough, he's going to make you pay for it. I still don't really understand Hans's hatred, his insight, his absolutely knowledge of Flint from the jump, or his full motives when it comes to Silver. It really does seem like blind loyalty in his case. If Treasured Island didn't exist, I'd assume a betrayal was on the cards once Silver kind of reached the top of the tower, you know, the king of the kingdom. But they are thick as thieves in the book, so I never really suspected that, to be honest. Maybe being an outsider, he can see the obvious in terms of Flint. Like I say, I don't pick on it too much because I enjoy Hans too much. But yeah, Silver, sounding confident, says he will not move against me. This will pass, and that's the end of this conversation sort of thing. Both men let down by believing they fully know the other in this episode. Flint missing the betrayal in Silver bringing the cash, I understand a little bit more. But unless Silver is just trying to convince himself, it really might be a bit naive from him here in thinking Flint will just let go of the bit. You know, and Hans, he pretty much says that. He shakes his head and he says so many lies to deny a simple truth. The crown does not divide. It cannot be shared. You know you want it done. You just don't know how to ask yet. Does Hans have a point? Is he onto something here? I'm deliberately kind of keeping discussion vague in terms of the ambiguous ending, which I'll tackle when we come to it. But to sort of share my thoughts here, it's sort of impossible not to, and sort of where I lean, because I think Hans is basically saying, you know this doesn't stop until one of you dies, right? This literally doesn't stop. He doesn't stop. There's no stopping him. He won't stop until you kill him. That's basically what I think's going on here, and I think Hans is 100% correct. Stern though, Silver says to him, you know, hear me clearly. There's no hidden messages here, no codes, and he doesn't want to hear any more on it. Right now, yeah, he is holding on to faith in Flint, and he threatens, yeah, his kind of wrath on Hans if he goes against those instructions. And so we cut to what Flint was saying to Dooley, and he's talking to him a bit about Skeleton Island, and yeah, we get some great first shot looks at it. Just looks amazing, doesn't it? Just absolutely. I don't know how they did it. I don't know if it's location, CGI. I'm not entirely sure. I've really got to check out some behind the scenes stuff with that one. High green cliffs, you know, mist, abandoned and moss overgrown, half sunken ship, just brilliant visuals. But yeah, I won't go into all what Flint's saying about it, you know, I've got to cut something for time really, but he's hyping up the island well, you know, a bit of a ghost story vibe. And Flint knows that Billy chose it for good reason, to put them out of balance where their imaginations might run wild and their darkest impulses made far harder to resist. And then he gets to his real point. You know, he tells Dooley he thinks Silver is compromised in this regards. He needs a new partner. And yeah, as they approach the island and the men are looking in awe, we see Flint and Dooley go below deck and they head to the cache. But of course, Hans has been aware that this was going to happen, because he's apparently the all-seeing eye when it comes to Flint, for whatever reason. We'll take it. So yeah, after they knock out the man on guard and they start sort of loading the cash, but yeah, they only knocked out the guard, and so he raises his pistol at Flint's back, and yeah, it's not looking good. But Hans is there with a little bit of hammer time, and it's a bit of a standoff between them. But Hans says he knew it would come to this, and he knows if they fight, if him and Flint fight, he dies or Flint dies. Either way, Silver is going to take him to blame for it. That's how far you've burrowed into his head. He won't put you out of it until he sees you for what you are. As for what, you know, Hans thinks this is, a tyrant, an unstoppable force, I'm not sure exactly what he sees Flint as, but the point is well made. So he tells them to go, and so yeah, it's a I told you so from Hans, as Silver watches Flint and Dooley take the cash on land, you know, through a glass. Do you see it now? And Silver prepares a launch, and he goes to join Woodes Rogers on his ship. And so yeah, on the ship, Billy is present here as well. This, of course, is all going to be music to his ears, even if he's on the wrong side now. You know, a bit of a I told you so for him. And yeah, Silver informs Woodes Rogers that Flint killed one of his men and he hauled the cash to shore. You know, he says he's come hoping his presence can buy them some time, because obviously, yeah, as I said earlier, this puts Maddie in immense danger. So I'm sort of, again, it's hard. You're like, come on, Flint, fuck him. But at the same time, you're like, oh no, Maddie. It's impossible. It's impossible. So yeah, he's come towards Rogers, hoping his presence can buy him some time until he can remedy the situation. And yeah, so Silver needs to do this damage control as much as he'll hate having to be civil with Rogers like this and kind of see Billy on the other side like this. But yeah, Silver, he's just about over all of this now. I think it's very clear to see. And Woodes Rogers asks, what the plan is. And we just see Joji, Hans and a few other guys get to land. And Silver says in the voiceover, he sent his 6 best men left. Their orders are to track Captain Flint and retrieve the cash. And Billy, knowing I think Silver's on just about his last nerve with all of this, asks, there was another order, wasn't there? He just wants to hear it, doesn't he, Billy? He just wants to hear it. And yes, Silver says, he instructed them to kill Captain Flint. And yeah, of course, these two, this pretty much dominates the next episode. And I know I've spent a lot of time on this today. So yeah, let's just put a pin in Flint and Silver, or I'm just going to start getting too ahead of myself with things. But before I do that though, I'm going to give my first MVP nomination to Silver. While they do, him and Flint sort of cancel each other out a little bit with their actions. He goes against Flint's wishes, Flint goes against his. While, as I say, both sides talk a lot of sense and they're both right on a lot of aspects, I think Silver deserves a little bit more credit for holding on to faith in Flint as long as he can. As I said last episode as well, for the main reason I nominate him, if he doesn't bring that cash, Maddie would have been killed. As I don't think firing the guns would have delayed that. Yeah, they might have got the final word, but Maddie would have still been dead, I am pretty confident. So yeah, Silver gets a nod for me here for that. So yeah, after that tense stuff, well, I mean, it's still tense here, but let's move on to the final section. And yeah, a last proper real deep dive into these two, well, 3, including Marion, these 3 amazing, awesome, badass, powerful women. Yeah, let's get on to Philadelphia. So yeah, we begin with Max tending to Anne's wounds, and yeah, she's just as tender as Jack, but notice Anne is not flinching this time, not making herself vulnerable here, despite it still probably being quite painful. Yeah, she's still giving Max nothing here in this moment, but Max is chatting away about progress, and yeah, you could almost believe this is a two-way conversation. Max is trying, she's really trying. I'd also like to just take a moment for Anne looking absolutely adorable in her little cozy socks. Gotta love a little bit of a cozy sock situation going on for Anne here. And yeah, Max is talking about Marion and how she's sort of gaining her trust, and she's excited in what might be next for them when Marion is convinced these seeds that Max has been planting was all her idea. But of course, we're going to see in a bit that Marion is a rare creature in that she is one step ahead of Max. But here Max is talking about Jack succeeding his mission and what that might mean for their future. And Anne sort of pulls away her hand and cuts her short. Why are you doing this? She sort of asks warily, talking about us like it's a thing. And yeah, Anne just says, I don't know who broke it first, but it broke, and there ain't no putting it back together again. And yeah, Max's face, she sort of turns away from her, and her face, it makes me so sad for her, it really does. Because yeah, this does sound like a very final bugger off, please. From Anne here, it really does, just leave me alone. It sounds final because she just sounds tired. She doesn't swear, she's not raising her voice. And Max knows that Anne doesn't say things without meaning them. But of course, yeah, a lot going on with Anne. Yeah, of course, Jack's safe return is absolutely going to be top of that list. And as we'll see in a moment, just frustrations in her healing progress. And yeah, she's thinking of moving on. And yeah, she's just still really struggling to give Max any leeway into repairing something between them. Just a bridge she's not ready to cross just yet. But of course, Idelle is about to give her a little bit of a shake and hype up her girl Max on that front. And yeah, at this point, Idelle enters and she sees Max is kind of visibly upset. And Max kind of makes a hasty retreat. Again, she doesn't want to pressure Anne. She knows Anne's still upset and she doesn't want to be like, look, I'm upset here. Well, Can we not do something? You know, she's still being respectful of that. So she gets out. And yeah, once Max leaves, it's kind of frosty between Anne and Idelle. And Anne sort of asks her to wait as she's about to leave. And she needs a favour. So when we cut back to Anne, she's alone. And she stands and she goes to try and cut a piece of bread. And yeah, it's great to see her up and about and her eyes looking a little bit better. But we can see her hands are still not good. She's just got no grip on this knife. And of course, yeah, the sad irony of Anne Bonny not being able to even cut a slice of bread with a knife is just lost on no one. Anne herself especially. Yeah, her swords, they're just a part of her almost, aren't they? They're just a part of her. Frustrated, the knife drops, just as Idelle walks in, and Anne goes back to the bed. And she gives Anne what she asked for. Info about the ship's in port, or about to be accepting passengers, ready to go, willing to take passengers. And yeah, Anne, she wants to bail. She wants to get out of Dodge. And Idelle sort of asks if she really intends to leave, whether Jack returns or not. And Anne immediately says Jack will return. I don't think she really believes it here, though, or she wouldn't be going. We know that now at this point, at this stage where she is. As with season 2, she is struggling with the separation, but obviously she's a lot more calmer on it now. And of course she knows she can be alone if she really needs to be. She doesn't want to be, but she knows she can do it if she needs to. She's trying to run before she walks in terms of healing as well. I think she's doing the classic thing, a lot of people do, fight or flight. She's doing the classic, everything is about to go to shit. I'm going to get out of Dodge before I have to face up to it all, I can't hear that Jack's died. I can't wait around here another however many weeks it takes to be able to use my swords again. And, inevitably in that time have to resolve this Max issue one way or the other. Yeah, I think that's what's kind of going on with Anne here. And it doesn't help that Idelle kind of hits her with a bit of a cold. You've probably seen the last of him, meaning Jack. Her and Idelle, they have a little bit of a stare off for a moment. And Idelle, she's debating whether she wants to say her piece. She's scared of Anne, I should say, or at least she was. And yeah, so there's no love lost with Anne for Idelle, but she knows she's important to Max. So yeah, she is about to give her a little bit of a kick up the arse. And whether it's to help her out the door or talk her back in, I don't think that Idelle is too concerned. She just wants to have her say about Max, I think. So yeah, I'm just going to pretty much quote this monologue, pretty much, because it's beautiful and I think it sums Max up so well, and my sentiments of her too. But yeah, first she says, you killed a friend of mine. There are men that would have killed Anne for her, for Idelle. She wanted to ask them, but Max refused. Says she couldn't work out then why. Was Max afraid of her? And she points out she was afraid of Anne. And the was isn't lost on Anne, I don't think. She sort of gives her a look then like, oh, you're not afraid of me anymore, sort of thing. And yeah, so Idelle says she respected Max's wishes. Do you know why? And yeah, this is beautiful. Because despite the world reminding her every day of her life that she is undeserving of being given anything by it, that she was unworthy of what she'd managed to take from it, despite all that, she never believed a word of it. That woman has been fighting the whole goddamn world since the day she was born. She's a breath away from winning that fight, and for whatever reason she wants to share the spoils with you, and you'd walk away. Woo! That nearly gets me reading it out when the way she says it, she never believed a word of it. Woo! And that woman has been fighting the whole goddamn world since the day she was born. Anne can relate to that. This is one of 3 or 4 great speeches that just get me every time. Vane's final stand, Flint's final stand, final episode, the Jack and Anne scene last episode, the one season 2 finale, and this one, it just absolutely gets me every time. Apparently reading it back as well gets me a bit. And yeah, Anne sighs and she sort of looks away a little bit ashamed, maybe a little bit kind of a bit of a reality hit her, a bit aware now that yeah, she's not an innocent here. As Idelle says once more, you killed my friend, I wanted you to know that. So yeah, she's saying, yeah, Max fucked up, I know, look where she started from, look where she's been through. And yeah, Anne is no stranger to hard upbringings either. And Anne absolutely has blood on her hands. Innocent blood. And Idelle is reminding her that. And who got you out of that mess? Max. Yeah, it's totally an MVP nomination for Idelle. She is an absolute real one. I love her and Max's bond. She's sticking up for her friend against her ex, who she's really not a fan of and probably doesn't care one way or the other what Anne does. But she knows Max is hurting, so yeah, she says her piece. And yeah, it's a great monologue. But yeah, she's given Anne some perspective now. Maybe not completely snapped her out of it, but yeah, she's given us some perspective on the fact that, yeah, if no Jack to return, she does still have someone on her side. Yeah, she's going to have to work a lot harder with it, and they've got a bit of a sort of another mountain to climb with it, but, you know, there's something there. And yeah, Idelle picks up the knife from the floor, and there's a moment of clear, vulnerable tension for Anne, but Idelle just cuts her a slice of bread and leaves. You know, Idelle, without words, saying, I'm helping you out here. Despite you killing my friend, I can move on with you. Are you able to put things into perspective and get somewhere with Max? Yeah, brilliant scene. I love that scene. So yeah, we've caught up with Anne before their final scene. So let's catch up with the woman of the hour herself, or M&M. I should call them both, as this is a great double act. I do wish we had more of these two. Their scenes together are just so good. They're fabulous. But yeah, we have to make the most of what we got here, unfortunately. So yeah, Marion and Max arrive at the docks. And yeah, Marion points out some pirate ships way off in the distance on a nearby island. You know, she sort of says the governor has promised to chase them off for years, but yet they still remain. And she talks about the port, and she wonders where the pirates will be in 10 years. And Max says, in the same place. You know, she's worked out that they're in cahoots with the governor. A very similar deal to what's going on Nassau. She says there is theft, but everyone benefits. Why would anyone want to end it? Which Marion clearly agrees with. And I think she's sort of got Max's game made out a little bit. She knows Max has been planting seeds with the thought that she'll turn around and be like, hey, I've got a good idea. You know, she knows that's what Max is doing. So she's sort of trying to cut that short in these scenes. She's sort of just getting to the point and saying, let's just be real with each other. You know, no need to tiptoe, dance this dance. I want to help, be part of this business venture. You know, that's sort of the impression I get out of this scene anyway. That's the conclusion I get. But I could have completely misread it all. And so, yeah, she asks about Eleanor, and they go back to her. You know, she asks, how well did Max know Eleanor? Quite well. I actually think she knows that as well, Marion. I actually think she knows that as well. I really do think she's pretty much an all-seeing eye like Max is. And the scene in a moment has me absolutely positive that she knows that Max isn't into guys. Again, Marion is basically Max however many years later. It's clear to see she's got her contacts and her sources also. And so, yeah, we're seeing from this side in what Marion's saying about Eleanor that she would have done well as well to have her granddaughter in her life. You know, they both would have thrived from it. Having her granddaughter around, teaching her the ropes. Yeah, she says while Joseph disowned Eleanor, she hoped that Eleanor was learning, growing, and would come and seek her out so she could teach her all the things a woman can do in this world, which is just exactly what Eleanor needed, just to help her out of those shaky times. But yeah, such great writing this episode. It's always good, but definitely some really notable turns of phrases that just stick out in this one. And yeah, Marion continues, you know, she says it's the wrong river and the wrong woman, but perhaps to even get this close to a fantasy is something. And yeah, what a positive way to look at a really sad tragedy, a want that never was. You know, the women in this show are really just something else. They really are. And as I just said, you know, Marion, she pretty much cuts to the heart of it. You know, she says, basically, assume we're done with all these pleasantries and let's just get on with it. So all that remains is knowing who's going to lead this venture. So she's like, I'm going to do it. I'm on board. Let's stop the dance. Let's go. So yeah, later, Max and Marion, they stand on an upper floor in a townhouse. And I love the reverse of the norm here. You know, 9 times out of 10 in a period piece, it's the man looking down, kind of deciding what woman he's going to pick for a wife. All the power, all the choice in his hands. As unless there's a romantic plot involved, you know, the woman usually has little say, but that has absolutely been turned on its head here. So yeah, Marion making this guy she's pointed out made him sound a bit useless in the smarts department, but he clearly has wealth and sway and things like that. And Max sort of asks first, that's the man you want to put in charge of Nassau? And Marion says, I'd like to put you in charge of Nassau, but the world won't care much for what I like. And yeah, Max works out relatively quickly that she means for her to marry him. And yeah, Max's face drops a little bit when she works that out. It's not what she wants, not how she wants to do it. And Marion says it might not need to be this particular man, but the point is, to have that kind of control, she needs someone occupying the role to solve a number of problems all at once. As I mentioned, I think she sort of has Max's sexuality worked out and reassures her in terms of her obligations to him. There's plenty of options to keep him happy on that front in Nassau, you know, she's sure, with little or no participation from Max. And yeah, I don't know if Marion is in exactly the same situation in terms of her sexuality, though I have my suspicions. I do have my suspicions, the vibing. You know, I think it's clear she probably has affairs. It's clear that she's in a pretty loveless marriage, that she's made to her benefit. Again, she's Max X many years later, isn't she? Except that Max has been the silent shadow partner before, very recently, and she knows, yeah, it's a lot harder than Marion's kind of making it out to be here. And yeah, Marion echoes a bit what Idelle was saying, you know, she can't imagine the road that Max has had to travel to get to where she is, but she says that that road led Max to her. Toll is small, but it must be paid. Again, the toll is not small for Max. We know that, and that is the difference between them. And Marion says, tell me you're ready to pay it, and we're going to get the ball rolling. We know Max could do it. Marion knows, Max knows, you know, as soon as they're introduced, she could do the business. It would be so easy, practically. But yeah, it is not what she wants, not how she wants to do it. So let's just get on to that scene. Final scene to discuss, and scene of the episode for me, obviously. Just beautiful closure for Max and Anne. So yeah, it's cold, snowy night, perfect setting. And yeah, Max is sat on a bench in quiet contemplation. And yeah, Anne has stayed. And she just sort of pops out, checking where she is. And so yeah, Anne is going to see how things play out after Idelle's speech, you know. And yeah, she's being a little bit softer with Max. Well, softer in the fact that she's approaching her first. She's still asked, what the fuck you doing out here? You know, in typical Anne fashion. And when Max doesn't immediately answer, she's about to go back to her kind of, well, sod you then, kind of attitude. I don't care, you know, Anne says after asking her to come back inside. Yes, you do, Anne, or you still wouldn't be here. So yeah, Max says it's happened. All they've been working towards since they arrived, all she's been doing, Marion's committed. And confused, Anne sits and sort of asks, well, that's good news, no? So why do you look like that? Only Anne could ask like a concern, you know, just in that way. Why do you look like that then? Anyway, but Max says she told Marion no. Marion wants a man in governor's office. Informs her she was to be said man's wife for appearance sake. But the power would rest with them. And Anne, sort of confused, says, you said no, why? You know, and she seems a little bit angry or frustrated by it. Of course, with Jack's half of the bargain being as dangerous as it is, perhaps she's thinking if he dies, you know, it could all be for nothing. But Max, she gets to the heart of it. She speaks about Eleanor, how in awe she was when she first met her, how she spoke to men the way she did with no fear. And yeah, Max definitely has a type on that front, doesn't she? And she says when she became her lover, became Eleanor's lover, she watched the decisions that she made and resolved to learn from them. When she became her rival, she watched the mistakes she made and she resolved never to repeat them. But at the end, when I thought I had surpassed her in every way, it seemed she was still trying to tell me something. You know, she says Eleanor surrendered everything she had sacrificed so dearly for, because it would have come at the expense of the one she loved. Boom. Max has learned her final lesson from Eleanor. You know, and she says, I said no to Marion's plan at the risk of losing the entire endeavour because I refused to situate a man in a position where he might interfere one day with my ability to repair things with you. And gives her a look. You know, my eyes always start welling up at this point when I'm watching it, because I know what's coming. You know, when Max says, you are the bravest person I have ever known. The truest person I have ever known. Whew! And I'm nearly reading it out again. And that is Anne just summed up beautifully. That is Anne summed up beautifully, isn't it? It really is. To be called the bravest and truest person someone's ever known. There's, like, probably no bigger compliment. There really isn't. I betrayed you and it sickens me. I am so sorry for working so hard to protect the wrong things, for failing to see there is nothing important that does not include you. And yeah, Max just breaks my heart. You know, her voice is breaking. She focused so hard on going against her past, not wanting to be on the outside looking in, that she let go of something really great, really beautiful that she had in the here and now. And with, you know, the endeavour she took, failing anyway. So, yeah, you know, she's learnt that lesson and she's letting that trauma finally go. And yeah, we just cut to a gorgeous shot of them from the back. And a few seconds pass and Anne just reaches out her hand, which Max takes. Yeah, Anne offering that olive branch finally. Yeah, Anne has forgiven her and she's offering her hand back in friendship, if nothing else. But, you know, I think my personal headcanon with these two, I think they definitely snuggle that night. I think that's a definite headcanon. But, yeah, I don't think it ever is as intense as it was the first time around. I think Anne gets the balance right between Max and Jack. You know, that she didn't get quite right in that very early kind of season 3 where she's really kind of neglecting Jack a lot. I think all three of them just get that balance so much better in whatever it happens in the time. Obviously, Mary Read comes into it, and obviously that's a whole nother dynamic and possibility and fan fictions that can be made from then on. Yeah, I like to think, you know, before it all kind of goes to shit for them, which I won't go deep into here, but that whenever they pop back to Nassau, you know, Anne and Max, they check in and they have a couple of days, a few nice days together. You know, that's how I see it. That's my headcanon. But she always, you know, she sails with Jack and she's with Jack. Yeah, just an absolutely gorgeous scene and just lovely closure for them. As you know, Anne and Jack, they are my ship out of every ship that has ever existed, pretty much. But Max and Anne, I love them so much as well. I love the journey we go on with them. And yet they have just been through so much together, so much apart, before they met, after they met. And they've both found their own ways of just to be thriving, to be top of the game in a man's world, pretty much. Yeah, I love both of them dearly, as you know, and yeah, this is just a lovely way to end their arc. But yeah, we do get quick catch-ups and final sort of thoughts in the finale with them both. But while I had more time in this episode, I really just wanted to give them a final hurrah, especially Max here, as like I say, Anne sort of had her final hurrah, and anything else is just bonus for Anne. I love Max. I'd die for Max. She's a ride or die for me. She's just a part of that trio for me. But yeah, anyway, I'm probably going over old ground here. My brain's rambling. I need some breakfast. So yeah, with all that said, of course, it is an MVP nomination for Max. Which, yeah, speaking of, let's wind this episode up finally. I feel like this has been a long one, but I always say that, and I always manage to get it kind of down to an hour, just about. So yeah, let's get that MVP sorted.
Last item.
Okay, so yeah, the MVP nominations this episode are Max, Idelle, and Silver. Yeah, I'm not going to milk it. It's Max. It's Max. You know, this episode really does more or less close her arc, like I say. But yeah, she's come so far, and she's a character I love a little bit more with every watch through. So yeah, that's 3 MVP wins now for Max, which is pretty good going to end on. Well, I say end on, as I said with Jack last episode, it's not impossible they don't pick up another one. Possible she picks up that last one, I don't know, but I don't think so. But you never know. But yeah, 3 is a great number for Max to end on. And yeah, I love Max. All hell Max. I would die for Max. Yeah, Max. Max. Say her name a few more times and she might appear like Beetlejuice. Alright, thank you for watching. I know I was lagging in the end there. I hope I got that final scene out alright. I start so strong and then my brain just starts lagging. I can't, but I have to do it all in one go because it's the law. Thank you guys for watching. Take care. And I'll be back very soon with the penultimate episode. You know, yeah, sort of thinking, I'm still talking, whatever. But, you know, sort of thinking ahead, yeah, 2 more episodes to go. I'm planning on doing like a little mini kind of Ben Blackcell's Treasure Island kind of thoughts. I'll do a little video like that. And maybe a bit further on in the distance, I might do a kind of Blackcell's versus the real history kind of video where I really have fun kind of going over all the great stuff that they incorporated from, you know, real life and doing something like that, because I really have been kind of learning and doing my research on that sort of stuff, but I still need to do a lot more for that, and I want to really make that a good presentable video. But yeah, there may be 1 or 2 little side things, but otherwise, once these next 2 episodes are done, I'm just going to get more involved in the kind of the Facebook, and I need to get on Reddit, and it seems Tumblr as well has been recommended as well. Alright, thank you for watching, guys. Take care, and I will see you very soon for episode 9. Alright, take care. Peace out. Bye.